Okay, folks, this is going to be the video on Andrew Yang, who I've been following for about a year now on Twitter. I fully support universal basic income as a concept based upon the libertarian ideology that, and which is to say, a socialist libertarian socialist ideology that everyone should have the basics to survive, and everyone should be able to choose in the way that they deem fit how they live their lives, and thusly how communities should form and interact and organically continually form and reform themselves throughout the course of humanity. As we move forward, because automation is coming and we already have 42% unemployed. So it's needed. And yet, what I'm seeing from Yang is the opposite of libertarian socialist. It's definitely socialist, but it's extremely authoritarian socialist. And it has a low amount of universal basic income, and it was the first policy, and it's one of his quote unquote top 3 that he puts out there on his website. And that, I think, is almost like the tease that confuses many people, because it's true. Universal basic income can be seen and can be used as a libertarian socialist construct, but that's not at all what he's doing. He's got a full platform that includes everything from, if you look on his website, not only micromanaging doctors in terms of the opioid crisis, quote unquote, which, like many, he's completely missing the point of the fact that disabled folks that use it for chronic debilitating pain, they need it. And I had a late mentor of mine that used opioids for like about the last 10 years of her life or so, 10, 15 years of her life. And by the way, about 5 or 6 years of those, she was actively working full time. And yet she had, among other things, pseudolupus and rods in her spine, trying to hold it together, and a few other medical issues. So we're not talking about, someone using it for arthritis or quote-unquote dental pain, as I've seen a couple of people trying to imply. No, that's not what this was about. This was severe, intractable pain, and therefore that was one of the things that she used. And she was fully doctor supervised. So, for folks of her ilk, you shouldn't demand that they go every 7 days to a doctor. You shouldn't have, yourself furtherly, quote unquote, databased and your doctor heavily monitored over the fact that this is the only treatment that really works for you. It's not considered the first methodology, but it's one that works for a good number of people. So it's a ridiculous thing. Personally, I'm allergic to it, so I have something that I use for my pain that's not at all covered. It's not at all, illegal or restricted, or at least not yet. But it's not that. And yet, my thing is, as a chronic pain patient, don't restrict someone else's ability to use what they need for their needs, as I ask that you don't restrict mine. Then one of the things as well is that a lot of the things in his platform that government can do a whole lot about and would not affect individuals, he's barely touching. climate change. He's mentioning the fact that, yes, he wants to eliminate all of the tax subsidies given to fossil fuel companies, but instead of switching over all of those subsidies to green energy companies and green energy providers, he's just going to end them, and then he's going to institute a carbon tax, which is just another tax, just another way to earn a buck. And it's something that, as with carbon credits, it's traded among different companies, and it will be traded among different companies. So it's another problem. Then he's saying gun safety. He's adding the concept of dangerous or violently mentally ill, as he terms it. And he's asking the concept of not only basic background checks, but also provide a receipt for a quote-unquote appropriately sized gun locker and or trigger lock for every registered gun, in terms of quote-unquote basic hunting rifles and handguns. And then it's he's asking for quote-unquote increased funding to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, insisting that it'll help prevent suicides. Those programs have a record of getting people killed by cops more than anything. And it's sick and it's sad, but it's true. Look at the rates of people who call, get help, and then get shot. Sorry, folks. This is not something that works via more government intervention. Wish it did. It doesn't. You need to make things in society better for people, easier for people, so that they want to live. And in terms of, again, he's going into the mental health, insisting that in essence people could be therapized into the concept of mindfulness programs. It's just, it really is this one, it's like, you have, the reason that we have a right to own guns is to prevent tyranny. I agree with people who say, you know what, if you really think that you're going to stop that with your vast amount of guns that you personally own, you're fooling yourself. They're right. But at the same time, one of the things that that's kind of unwritten is that while you're not going to directly do that, the fact is that the oligarchs don't want a bloodbath on their hands. And that's one of the reasons that it somewhat acts as a tiny bit of a buffer. Not much, but it's something. And more to the point, for the concept of people that are poor and hunt, it's a valuable tool. Hunting with anything else but a gun is far harder and requires far more physical abilities than is required for using a gun. Which is to say, bow and arrow or knife with something like a deer. I'm not saying that people don't do it. I'm just saying that it's a whole lot easier with a gun. One of the other things is that he's actually, as opposed to me and many others saying that how dare they try to control and restrict the internet, he's actually saying that for news and information, ombudsman is what he wants. And that's a problem if he's trying to therefore say that we must regulate fake news at a federal level, when in reality, the government created this problem via making, in essence, a ministry of propaganda, making it legal, taking away protections against virtual monopolies, and then saying, guess what? We still have a somewhat informed public, and knowing that they really don't. And so it's a real problem. This, again, to me, is probably the scariest section of the website. Let me read it for you. The rewards for publishing inflammatory content are high with no real penalty. At the extreme end, those who wish to misinform the public can do so with little fear of repercussions. The lack of trusted news increasingly isolates us in information silos that hurt democracy. We don't have a democracy. We have an oligarchy. But put that aside. It says, we must introduce both means to investigate and punish those who are seeking to misinform the American public. If enough citizens complain about a particular source of information and news is demonstrably or deliberately false, there should be penalties. I will appoint a news and information ombudsman with the power to fine egregious corporate offenders. And it's foreign nationalism is represented, and it's completely sick to me. I'm part of the Free Assange movement. I'm part of, Chelsea Manning as well. It's really sick. He wants to as well encourage self-driving cars, which so far have proven completely unsafe in every way. He's also, and this is to me a really rather insidious construct, he's asking for for what he's terming a time banking construct, which is really trading services and this financial. Yes, modern time banking is what he calls it. And this is the thing, is he's calling it banking points, which I have no issues, and I absolutely love it. There's at least one website that does something similar to this, where people in essence trade services that they do, and at times money's involved, but for the most part it's service for service. And or item for item. So it's a direct, informal way, semi-formal way of trading. What he's doing, though, is he's making the federal government mandate it, or at least heavily regulate it. And he's going to be asking, in essence, that the government determine what all of these things are valued at. And with things like volunteering at a local shelter, especially if that's homeless shelters, universal basic income was supposed to obliterate, or darn close to it, those. Coaching Little League, fixing a neighbor's appliance, tutoring a local student. All of these things, frankly, are paid skills right now. And if he's saying that he wants to increase trade schools and help get the trades encouraged, and yet at the same time, here on another part of his website, he's discouraging that and saying that in essence it should be kind of a free service to be traded, almost. Not quite free, but close to it. He's not even making sense on his own website about all the complexities of the added regulations that he wants to add. And another thing as well is the concept that he's saying, modernize voting. He wants us to vote via our cell phones, when already one of the biggest problems is the easily riggable voting machines, and the fact that a lot of us are noticing that things are disappearing, and we know that already via NSA that, in terms of Snowden, that the government is listening on freaking every phone, or at least can, whenever they want to. So we're gonna then now, and he's saying that after this we should just trust our cell phones to vote. I don't care if he's saying blockchain or whatever. The point is that if we can't even trust the integrity of our phones to be private and or to be fully in our control, which we can't, there is none of the regulations that he's mentioning that is actually going to truly modernize and make, even I checked out in terms of his, and he does have a small section on AI, but he's saying that it should be regulated as a public-private partnership with business experts on the panel, which means Amazon is going to regulate Amazon, or Amazon, with their people that created Alexa, is going to monitor Google's AI, and vice versa. And that's in the best of scenarios. How exactly is that sense? I just, like, I mean, look, if they wanted to say, I'm gonna hire someone that's a security expert with a pardon, like, and again, I understand he's controversial, but like Edward Snowden, for the job of saying, let's monitor privacy and security, then I might be able to say, you know what, maybe him. But to actually say, we're going to just give Bezos and, then, he's not at all been clear, and he's gone back and forth as to whether, people with disabilities would be able to keep their existing SSI and or SSD benefits in terms of direct monies, which, especially if you just add the $755 a month for SSI plus about $250 a month for SNAP, which per person, especially if you just add on the additional matching funds, in terms of how a lot of places in this country have at least 20%, or in some cases outright doubling of SNAP amounts when you go to farmers markets. So no matter what you're talking about, and with UWI, he's already said, and this makes sense, that universal basic income would mean that SNAP would disappear. Well, if you did that, then based upon that construct, you're automatically going to decrease the amount that someone has to live on that is on just plain SSI, which is for disabled poor people. And the poem was wrong in terms of how the poem went. Of first they came for the they, and I believe they said it was Jew first. They came actually for the disabled first. That was actually the first group, and that was actually the left out group. And the reason why it was left out was because it was deemed that, well, they could not fully, participate, they could not fully contribute to society, and not enough people spoke up on their behalf. And so they were the first killed. I don't think that the Democrats are going to let this thing be rigged for him. I hope not. But frankly, I've gone from saying he's my top choice to saying, I'll take 16 years of Trump to him. And I cast my ballot for Jill Stein. and used to walk an extra 4 to 6 city blocks just to avoid going near a Trump property building in New York City when I lived there, just because I couldn't stand him that much. Which I stopped that by the time I left New York City. But that should give you a bit of a perspective. I'm not saying that I like Trump in terms of what he's doing. I'm rooting for the election, for someone somehow to make some sense, and for a Green Party candidate to actually get through and win, because that's really where most of my political alliances are and leanings are. But people keep on calling Andrew Yang some version of libertarian. He's not. He is categorically not. He is loopy authoritarian. Psychologists, and now I kind of get why he was and related Marianne Williamson. She's not a heck of a lot better, but it could be that she's just not filled out her platform. She's someone that he actually promoted, and that makes me frankly question her. And Yang mentioned that his brother was a psychologist, and that I'm not saying that psychologists are bad people, but I am saying that when you have relatives of an industry, it will influence your perspective. And then I am also, and frankly, there's been 1 or 2 psychologists I've visited that have been very helpful. But my thing is that when I see this platform of controlling everything, and yet not enough controls being placed upon easily regulatable items that the government has always had control over, it is extremely disturbing. And it should be disturbing to you as well. I invite, as always, people to read for themselves. As I share this video, I'm going to put the link to his website, and I encourage people, read it thoroughly, read it fully. Number 1 thing that I have is don't just blindly trust anyone. Okay, don't. Read, but please try and at least listen to some of my words. This is not a good fit. Shalom.